Or should I just share my screen?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to wait a few more minutes just to have everyone join us, and then we'll get started shortly. While we're waiting for everyone, if you want to put where you're tuning in from in the chat, we'd love to see where everyone is from. Have some AZ folks. Hi, everyone. Listening in while at work. Thank you. We appreciate you tuning in. For everyone who joined us, we're going to wait a few more minutes just to capture everyone who RSVP'd. If you haven't already, let us know in the chat where you're tuning in from. I have someone from Hawaii. Hello. Have some people from India. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. California. Happy to see you're here, Elise. Chicago. Awesome.
Mark, that seems like a really nice way to say that you're old.
It's quite a list.
It's not inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Mark, do you want to give it till about 8:35 and then get started?
Sounds great.
Cool.
Welcome, Hamid. We have Hamid joining us from Iran. We've got Chicago, North Carolina, Massachusetts, New Jersey. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll get started here in just a moment.
All right, what do you say?
Go for it.
All right, so welcome everybody. We're first going to make some introductions. My name is Mark Nevu. I'm the head of the architecture program. With us, we have Corey Cisco, who's a graduate coordinator senior, and she's going to be your main point of contact through the application process. And we have Phil Horton, who's the interim director of the design school. So what we're going to do is I'll give a somewhat brief introduction to the program, to what we do here, and then we'll open it up for questions if you have any. What I'd like to do is use the Q&A function in Zoom rather than the chat. That way everybody can see the questions. And if you have questions as we go through them, you can post them in the Q&A. And if we can answer them quickly, we will. Corey will do that. And then if we want to have a larger discussion about them, we can talk about them at the end of the presentation. All right. So again, welcome. I have been at ASU now for 2 years. It's been a whirlwind 2 years. It's been an incredible experience. And I'm coming from Los Angeles, which was a great experience. But I've been, I have to say, I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, but I've been surprised at how amazing the design culture is here in the Valley. And there's an incredible group of architects, a really great community, both professionally and in terms of our academic community. So it's really a great environment to be in. So I did arrive here. We chose to move here very much for the mission of the university. ASU is a comprehensive university, measured not by whom it excludes, but whom it includes, and how they succeed. And that is a very important component to our program. We want to make sure that people feel included. We want to make sure that people succeed, and we want to make sure that we have impact in our community. So that core value, that core sort of charter, really helps us as we've been really rethinking how our program will be delivered. So I wanted to step back and mention a few people that I've met here that I've actually sort of had the privilege really to get to know. What is an architect? Who is an architect? Architecture is a varied field. It's getting more and more varied. Architects do a lot of different things. Karine Santiago is an ASU grad. She's also an owner of her own office, Lightbox Studio. Steve Jordan used to be a professional football player, played for the Vikings, and is now head of HR for Ryan Companies, which is a national office that does everything from development to facilities management. Martha Abbott is the partner, or principal, I should say, at Gensler here in Phoenix. Gensler is an international office, one of the largest offices in the world, and Martha is the head of the Phoenix office. Andy Burns owns an office called Construction Zone, which is a local design build. So they not only design buildings, but they also build them, one of the sort of top-notch construction offices in the city. Wanda Della Costa is Cree Nation, also a registered architect, also a full-time faculty member at ASU. Diane Jacobs also owns her own office. She's an adjunct faculty here at ASU. Eddie and Neil Jones are from Oklahoma originally. Eddie on the left with the funky red shoes, he's the designer. And Neil runs the office, so he's more of a business person. Lorenzo Perez, also an ASU grad from the mid-90s, has done work in construction, done work in development, and now he owns his own business doing all of that, and doing a lot of work here in Phoenix. He's a native Phoenician, grew up here, and is an ASU grad as well. So if we think about it, you could add your name to the list very soon, we hope. Who teaches architecture at ASU? We have a varied faculty. You're going to meet many of them. We have people who are practicing architects like Darren Petrucci, Claudia Beckstein, Karine, Michael Rotundi, Scott Murph. We have historians, theoreticians, technologists. It's a great group of faculty. We're growing, so we're going to be adding new faculty over the next couple of years. And we also have an amazing group of local practitioners who help teach studios and other classes. So it's a great group. You're going to get to know them very well. They're very excited. So what kind of programs do we have at ASU? In architecture, we have 3 graduate programs. We have the MArch 3-year track, the MArch 2-year track, and the MSArch, which is a 1-year non-professional degree. The 3-year track is open to anybody with any degree. So if you have a degree in literature or whatever it might be, you would enter into the 3-year track. The 2-year track is the last 2 years of the 3-year program, And it's for somebody who has an undergraduate degree from a field similar to architecture, so landscape, interior design, or architecture. So if you're graduating from our 4-year program, you would enter into the 2-year track. Those degrees are both professional. That means that you can sit for the exams after you've completed your experience, and you'll have a professional degree. So those are degrees that help you get licensed. The MS Arc is a 1-year degree. It's 3 semesters, not professional, meaning it's not a degree that will allow you to sit for exams. And it's a degree that is really focused on energy modeling. And so if you're interested in that, you could do a continuous MArch and MS-Arch if that is of interest. Or after you've completed your degree, you could continue on for an MS-Arch in energy. So we have been working on a redesign for the last couple of years, and launching in 2021, in fall 2021, will be a new 3-year curriculum. It's streamlined. It's intended to allow students to do more than architecture, and I'll explain more in a moment about that. We're launching a 3-year degree first in 2021. The 2-year will launch a year later in 2022. The curriculum is based around basically 3 courses a semester: a studio, in the first semester, a visualization course and a technology course. And in the second semester, a studio, a history class, and a technology class. This year is all about iteration. So learning how to design, learning how to iterate. The second year is all about integration. And so paired with the studios in each semester, we have a visualization class, a history class, then a theory and a technology class. And in this year, we're really thinking about how the courses integrate. And in the final year, it's all about innovation. As you're going to see, AST is all about innovations, and we really want to question what does that mean for architecture. So in terms of the 3rd year, you're going to take a research class, a theory class, a practice class, and a final technology class along with studio. So those 3 years, those 6 semesters, as I said, have been streamlined. So you have 12 units a semester, a studio, and then 2 other courses. And what that allows you to do is to think about taking something else. And so we've been framing this graduate program as an MArch plus. Many of our students come into ASU and they see everything that's around them, and they want to take more than just architecture. We encourage that. We actually built so that so about how you can take an architecture degree and, for example, real estate development, or a degree or certificate in sustainability. Healthcare architecture is a big industry right now. Maybe you're interested to take some courses in the College of Health Solutions. These opportunities will be mapped out for you, and we want to encourage you to try to take architecture plus something else. Or maybe you need to work, or you want to work. This curriculum will allow you to do that. And so we really want to support students to succeed in their own individual path. And this is already happening. We're already starting to do this. Namitha Jewelry graduated last year with an MArch and a degree in construction management. This was her thesis project. Abdullah graduated with a degree in sustainability and architecture, and he's went on to do his MS-Arch as well. Silvia Martinez looked at food ecologies in the Yaqui Nation and worked with local community members in Guadalupe to think about what a community center might be. So she was working not only on her MArch, but also with members of the community locally. Nathan Hayes has a degree in both architecture and a certificate in biomimicry. This is his thesis, where he was looking at various strategies on using biomimicry in design. Paul Giordano graduated with an MArch and an MBA and is now working at Gensler. And Holly Chilikas graduated with a degree in architecture and real estate development, and now she's working in a construction office locally. Namitha Jewelry graduated with an MArch degree in urban design, and she's now working in Boston, working at a very large firm, thinking about city and also campus planning. Oops. So one thing, I'm going to go back for a moment. One of the things we want to stress is that students are entering into a profession that was a very different profession than the one I entered into in the mid-90s. is expanding, it's innovating, its offices are changing. There's a lot of different types of offices. And so we want to make sure that students who enter into a profession are able to actually be adaptable and plug in different ways. We want to make sure that they're prepared to enter into a very different profession than it was 30 years ago. And we think that by offering an MArch plus other potential degrees, you will enter into the profession with a leg up over other people. You'll be better prepared, and you'll actually be able to follow your interests in different ways. So while you're at ASU, we strongly encourage you to get involved, and we have some great student organizations. The student organizations, student organizations include include NOMA, National Organization of Minority Architects, which is a burgeoning local chapter, but we also have a great chapter here at ASU. We have the AIAS, which is the American Institute of Architecture Students, national organization. And our students at ASU developed LASSO, which is a Latinx architecture student organization. All of these are great opportunities to get involved. There are many other programs around ASU, and we very much encourage you to meet other people and get involved in ASU. So what happens after you graduate? As I said before, we want students to enter into a profession and change it. We want students to be better prepared than any other program. And so we're going to help you to succeed in getting internships as well as getting work after you graduate. We have something called Studio Night, which is an annual event where firms come into our studios and students present to the firms. And it's really a kind of matchmaking evening where students meet local practitioners, and it's really where many of our students actually get jobs. So prior to graduating, we're going to get you in touch with local offices. We're going to help you get an internship. And if you want to work in a big office, we have big offices in town. If you want to work in a smaller, more sort of focused residential firm, perhaps we have that as well. If you want to work internationally or nationally, we can help you do that. So really, we want to help you to enter into the profession and then really change it. That said, if you want to get a degree in architecture and go do something else, like all of these people, you can do that too. And yes, Ice Cube studied architecture here in Phoenix. Nice little fun. All right, I'm going to let Corey take it over now.
All right, thanks, Mark. So outside of architecture, we have other programs that are offered. And just to note that the architecture program is STEM designated. So for those international students, that's important. We also have the Master of Interior Architecture that has a 3+ and a 2-year pathway. Same for the Master of Industrial Design, and that is also STEM. We also have the Master of Landscape Architecture that has a few pathways. There's a 3-year, similar to the MArch, that for any undergraduate degree can join us, a 2+. So this
So Corey is frozen. Do you want me to take over?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark, or I can sort of speak.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry everyone. Corey froze there for a second. Hopefully she'll rejoin us in a moment. So what Corey was just explaining is that within the design school, we have a broad number of graduate degrees, several of which are STEM designated. The studio-based degrees, there are 4 that are STEM designated, the Master of Architecture being the longest sort of tenured as STEM designated, and the MID program, Master of Industrial Design, the MLA program, the Master of Landscape Architecture, and our MS-IVD, the Master of Science in Innovation and Venture Development, all being recently STEM designated. The Master of Science in Architecture, the post-professional research program that Mark spoke about earlier, is also STEM designated. I see a question from Jake Netter. STEM just means science, technology, engineering, and math. A STEM designated degree provides benefits relative to certain scholarship opportunities that don't exist beyond STEM. It's important for international students. It allows for a longer period of what's called OPT, or optional practical training. You can do what's called a 24-month extension. And it also has benefits for veterans, extended GI benefits. So I don't have the slides, but if we could advance those, I think that covers everything that's here. Many of you probably know that ASU, if you don't know, I'm surprised that anyone wouldn't know. So ASU is the #1 university in the US for innovation, now 6 years in a row. So it was just announced for 2021. It's an amazing environment, a university that's really unlike any other, a very fast-paced university, a very impact-oriented university, lots of really great and interesting programs and activities happening really on a daily basis across ASU. Next slide. So we have a 2-part application process. This is important for anyone who wants to begin to apply to the program. Part 1 is to apply to the university's graduate college. And this is where you're basically getting generally accepted as a graduate student at the university. So there's an application, your official transcripts from your undergraduate institution will be requested. And for any international students, there are English proficiency tests, either the IELTS or the TOEFL. And for any of our programs that do require GRE, that's needed as well. The Master of Science in Architecture, or MSArch program, does require the GRE, but the MArch, the Master of Architecture program, does not require the GRE. Then there's also a second part to your application through what's called Slide Room. This is where you'll upload your portfolio, typically in PDF format. You'll complete a statement of purpose, or a letter of intent, if you will. And you'll also provide email addresses for 2 letters of recommendation. And typically you want at least one of those recommendations to come from a faculty member or your undergraduate institution, so that they can talk about your capacities as a student. But it can also be great to have someone who is an employer that might talk about your sort of professionalism, especially given that the Master of Architecture program is a professional degree program. Next slide. So if you have questions, the best thing to do is to email designgrad@asu.edu. That will go to both Corey and Christy, both of whom are graduate coordinators for our school. And Corey and Christy both have their offices here in the administrative wing, where I am currently in a building called Design North. For those of you who are on the ASU campus, we're right on University, block east of Mill Avenue. For those of you who are zooming in internationally, the design school is located on the main campus, or the Tempe campus of ASU. ASU also has a downtown campus, a Polytechnic campus, and a West campus, but we're on what's called the main campus, or the Tempe campus. Next slide. And one thing that I would encourage everyone to do is to like and follow us on social media. You can find at ASU Design School on Instagram. There's also an @architecture.at.asu, and you can find one from the other. So please do check us out on social media. You'll get a good window into some of the events that are happening at the school, as well as a number of the examples of student work or other ongoing sort of areas of interest. I think that's our last slide, correct? So we'll open it up from there for questions. And there are some questions that are already in the Q&A. I'm currently typing a response to Sergio Esparza's question, but we'll go through them sort of one by one. I'm going to read this response, but I'm also going to type it. So Sergio asks, is there a program to prep/start to get a license as a professional architect? The answer to that is you can begin your NCARB record, the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, as an NMARC student, and you can get your hours, collect hours during an internship. And one thing of interest, while we don't have sort of an integrated path to licensure, we have a number of examples of students who have completed their licensure within a year of graduating from the program, having completed, say, 4 of the 6 exams, and will complete the last 2 exams. Every state has a different time to licensure, meaning how much experience you have to have. So sometimes you'll have the exams completed before you've completed all of your experience hours. And then once you complete the experience hours, you'll work with the state registration board to finalize your licensure. And we have connections to the technical registration office, to the local AIA, and all sorts of other forms of support to help those who want to make sure that they're actively on their path to licensure through their graduate studies. There's also a question here of what is STEM. I mentioned it's science, technology, engineering, and math. And again, STEM designated programs, there are certain scholarships that are unique to STEM. There are benefits for international students with an extension for what's called OPT, or optional practical training. There are also some benefits for veteran students, which are extensions to the GI benefits. There's a question here, what is the Master of Science in Architecture program like? Mark, do you want to maybe talk a bit more about that?
Sure. So the Master of Science is a 1-year program, and it's a really an independent study in many ways. You work with faculty. It's a 3-semester program, and you develop different techniques for energy modeling in buildings. And it's a program that has connections to other parts of our university, including School of Sustainability and the School of Sustainable Built Environments. And it's really a program that's thinking about energy and carbon and sustainability in a kind of project-based 1-year program. I do want to mention that it's not professional. So you are typically, somebody who enters into that program has a degree already and has a pretty solid understanding of architecture, has been through architecture school. And this is really a kind of 1-year, more research-focused degree.
So there was a question about what is the GRE and are you required to take the GRE? So most of our programs do not require the GRE. The MSArch, or the Master of Science in Architecture, does require the GRE, but the MArch, the Master of Architecture program, does not. The GRE is a standardized test typically for graduate students. It's a multi-part test with different categories of, let's say, assessments of your preparedness as a graduate student. What we've found, and we did an extensive kind of multi-year study, was that the correlations between success on the GRE and success as a graduate student, or even success beyond school and into your career, wasn't really corollary. So we took the GRE out of the Master of Architecture program because we found that it simply wasn't a strong tool for being able to assess student success or even career success beyond. Connor has a question about wanting to know more about the extended GI benefits. I will go find a website that explains that, and I'll look to paste it here in the Q&A, and I'll turn over some of the other questions to Corey and Mark while I go look for that particular website.
Hi everyone, sorry I got booted off, but I'm back. So I selected a few questions to answer here. So do I still need to send all information to the department that it says in the application process? Will someone be there to accept it? So you don't need to send anything physical into the office, other than if you want to submit your official transcripts through mail, you will do that. You would send that to the graduate admissions office, and we have all that information on our website in terms of the address and whatnot. Everything else will be an electronic submission. You can even submit your official transcripts through an email, which also is listed on our website, but I'll follow up with that information with everyone that RSVP'd as well. In terms of portfolio and whatnot, that'll be in your letters of recommendation, that'll be submitted through SlideRoom. And then that will all come through the design school through the slider room application.
There's a question about what does a portfolio look like if you don't have a design background? That's a really good question. And it's one that we think about here during the application process, because if you don't have a background in design at all, it's really hard to put something together. So what we want to see is some creative work. It could be really anything. There was a portfolio years ago that I've heard about a sushi chef putting together a description of how they make sushi, and it was a creative act. So something that shows your creativity is really what we're looking for. And I should also mention that your story is really important. So I want to, like, when we look at application processes or the applications, we want to hear from you. We want to know who you are. All right. And that's really stress that. So tell us about yourself.
And then there is a question here that says, can students with related undergrad degrees that are not architecture get waived out of introductory courses in the 3-year program? For example, building science major with construction and architecture, or concentrations in architecture and design. While the admission committee are reviewing your application, they will at that time recommend any sort of waivers. And you will be notified in your offer letter or just through the grad advising team if that is the case.
There's a question about licensure. So the way licensure in the United States works is that every state gives out the license, right? So the state is the one who determines your licensure. But in the United States, there's something called NCARB, which is an organization of all of the state registration boards. And when you register with NCARB, you can receive reciprocity from state to state. There are 2 states that require additional exams, and those are California and New York. So if you want to practice in California with a license, and you have a license in Arizona, and you're NCARB certified, then you need to take an additional exam, which deals with seismic, so the earthquake issues in California. Other than that, if you receive a license in Arizona and you have NCARB certification, you can practice in other states if you work with NCARB. So it's not a problem at all. I should also say, though, that you do not need a license to work in an architecture office, which is unlike law and medicine. So as you begin your experience, the education of the architect actually includes working. And so it's expected that you need an additional 3 years of work before you sit for your license.
And then I've grabbed a few questions here. So does the recommendation type and answer questions about the graduate student, or do they send in a PDF letter for the graduate student? So this process is all done through Slideroom. So they will, the application will actually ask a few ranking questions, and then there is the option to attach a PDF that will actually have the letter of recommendation there. The student doesn't do anything other than input the name and email, and then the recommender will receive the email from Slideroom and fill it out there. And then there's a question about the concurrent degrees, or the MArch Plus. So the question is the MArch Plus a different degree from the MArch? If you do opt for it, is it counted as 2 different degrees, say architecture and healthcare? So that is correct. If you want to do 2 formal programs, that is called a concurrent degree here at ASU. And what we are currently doing right now is mapping out what those concurrent degrees would look like. So we will have options for you when it comes to the most popular or most requested programs with the concurrent degree. If there's something outside of what we've already mapped out for you, we will certainly help you map out whatever program that you would want to map out. But the MArch Plus, you don't have to opt into that. If you just want to complete the MArch, that is totally okay. If you want to just take some courses, you're more than welcome to do that too outside of architecture.
So there's a question about interior architecture, and if you have a degree in interior architecture at ASU, you would actually go into the 2-year program. Yes, and that's the same for landscape architecture at ASU. Those programs very much get you ready for the MArch 2-year program. On top of that question, there was a question about does the 2-year degree start in 2021? And it does not. We're going to roll that out year over year. And so the 3-year MArch, the new curriculum, begins in 2021. The new 2-year begins in 2022. So we can't start both at once. We'd have too many classes happening at the same time. So we're just launching it 1 year by 1 year. And I should also mention that we are also going to be offering, also beginning in 2021, a MArch online. So if there's interest to do an online degree, it's the same curriculum as in person, it's just online. And there'll be a kind of a launch for that in 2021. Question about how progressive is the program in terms of sustainability. We're at ASU, and ASU is one of the leaders in sustainability nationally, and we very much take part in that. So we have connections with schools of sustainability, sustainable built environments programs. Our faculty teach in both programs. And so it's very much a part of our curriculum and very much a part of the university. It's amazing that ASU is carbon neutral. And if you've ever been here, it's a huge, huge place. It's like a little city. And we are completely carbon neutral as a university. So yes, it's a very important part of the program. Any specific grading criteria after a BArch? So we don't have grading criteria when we look at the portfolios. What we're looking for are different sort of ways in which a student will succeed at ASU. And so what kind of experience do they have? What does the portfolio look like? What's the balance between professional work, if they have any, and academic work? What's the quality of the portfolio? You know, that's a really important thing. How is your GPA? It's not the most important thing, but we do look at it. And most importantly, we want to know about you. So what is your path? What is your story? Tell us about yourself. That's really the most important thing.
And then I got a question from Elise here. So any undergrad degree other than architecture has to do the 3-year program, like general design with a focus on architecture or building design. So I would recommend applying to the 3-year track. That does not mean you'll be admitted into that, but like I said earlier, the admission committee will review all of your application materials at once. If they want to recommend for a waiver or you to be admitted into a different pathway, that'll happen at that point and you'll be notified then.
There's a question about licensure internationally. So it's a really good question. How licensing happens is different country by country. So there is no reciprocity that I'm aware of with United States licenses and licenses internationally. That said, if you are working internationally and you are a student at ASU and you want to work in London and you work for an architect who has a license in the United States, that can count towards your licensure as long as you're working under an architect with a US license. But it doesn't necessarily translate as a professional license to the UK, for example. I will say that it helps if you have if you're a registered architect in the US, getting a job internationally is definitely a big credential to have. The online launch is for the 3-year program. So we're going to launch that similarly to our on-ground program. We're launching the MArch at the same time. So it'll be a 3-year degree, 2021. The 2-year degree will launch in 2022. And if you want to apply for the 2-year program in 2022, you'd apply a year from now. So it's the same cycle. We open up September 15th. And then we extend, it's a rolling deadline. So if you put your materials in September 12th or September 16th, they'll be reviewed in September. And then we will actually notify you. Priority deadline is January 15th. So we want to have everybody who really wants to be here in by January 15th, but we do remain open and it's a rolling deadline. So 1 year from now for 2022.
Yeah, but I'll piggyback on that because there's a question here. Is there an opportunity to participate in assistantships? So if you want to be considered for funding, please get your application materials in by January 15th. That is when all of the applicants will be actually reviewed in order to receive either scholarships or teaching assistant positions. So there is an opportunity to participate in those. We prioritize the 2-year applicants because they already have a background in architecture, and the assistantships will support the undergraduate program. So that the 2-year applicants are who are considered for the TA positions. However, with those 3-year students, once you complete your first year, which is, technically the additional year, you will be then eligible. And I make sure that everyone gets the application when they are eligible, and we'll make sure that that information is dispersed at that time. In terms of benefits for the TA position, you get a tuition reduction that is 50% of tuition, and then you also get a stipend check for the semester that you are a TA. If you have any specific questions about that, let me know and I can guide you through that too.
So Gina, good question about COVID. I don't think COVID has not impacted any part of our lives these days. The fact that we're doing this is, virtually or remotely, is a direct result of that. I have to say though that I'm in March of last year, right after spring break, we went fully remote. So what that meant was the studio that I was teaching in person went remote the Monday after spring break, and it was a bit of a shock, I have to say. Like, it was a bit of fumbling through Zoom, things getting dropped. Everything was going on, but there's a huge silver lining in all of this, in the sense that we think that the different modalities of teaching can actually improve how we teach. We can reach more people. We can actually include more people. We can change the way in which we've traditionally taught, and we can question some of the things we always just assumed we should teach, right? So how we teach studio changes, how we lecture changes, how we get information changes. So it's a big opportunity. And, Michael Crow has a great, Michael Crow is the president of ASU, has a really great line. He said, we're not sort of weathering a storm, we're in a totally new environment. And that's really how we're approaching it. We're not thinking about this as something that's going to end tomorrow. We're not bracing for it until it ends. We're actually rolling with it, and we're gonna go with it and see where it leads us. And like I said, it's I think a really big opportunity to rethink how we teach. So we're excited, actually.
So Mark, I think there's some confusion about the rolling out of the 2-year program. So I just want to kind of address that too, since we're getting questions. So the 2-year program will be available next fall. It'll just be with the current curriculum. There are still concurrent degree options available too. Mark and the Faculty of Architecture have just redesigned the curriculum structure and whatnot. So it will be available. If you do want to start the program, you can start with the current curriculum that we have, and we can send that out to everyone too who's interested in knowing what that looks like. And then we also already, just as Mark already listed, we have all those concurrent degree options available. It just won't be the MArch Plus that he described earlier. And you can apply for that as of now for next fall.
Yeah, so all of the programs are open and available. The new curriculum just starts in different years, that's all. Statistics for employment. We don't, Corey, I don't think we have those currently, do we?
No, we do not.
So, architecture is part of the building industry, and like with everything, the building industry goes up and down. We've had a very strong economy here in the Valley for the past 10 years, 12 years. Employment is very easy to come by right now. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID. Most firms that I've spoken with over the past 6 months are actually very busy. So a lot of construction that was happening is still happening. If it changes, it's going to be nationwide. And so we're doing really well right now, but I don't know a year out, and it's hard to predict. If I knew a year out, I'd be running for president, I think, because I'd have a little more information than anybody else.
And then Mark, do you want to address the differences between the 2021 current curriculum and then the new curriculum?
Yeah, so they're actually very similar. The one thing we've done in the new curriculum is just tried to streamline it. So the current curriculum has visualization courses, it has history classes, technology classes, etc. And it was something that we've been sort of working with over time and building over time. And through the redesign, one of the major things that happened, and this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but NAB, which is the accrediting body for architecture, changed a rule whereby they had previously said you were required to have X number of units in architecture. They've removed that requirement, and what that does is it puts us in line with most other graduate programs at ASU. Our graduate program will have 48 units, most have 30. So prior to that, we just had more units. So we have more classes. So what we'd like to do is actually what we are doing is streamlining the program, reducing the number of contact hours, and allowing you to do other things at the university. So you can still do it now, and all the examples I showed you are people doing 2 degrees concurrently. It just requires more course time. And so we're trying to, again, support students by reducing the number of contact hours and actually offering them more opportunity. But you'll be getting the same content. It's not like a lesser degree or anything like that. It's just fewer courses.
And then the 3 years open to apply for fall 2021. That is correct. So that will be open and enrolling by that point.
The question about waiting to get an intern or waiting to apply to get an internship is a good question. My own background is that I went to an undergraduate degree. I went to a professional undergrad, but I always wanted to go back to grad school. And so I worked for a couple of years, got some experience, really enjoyed working in an office. It was eye-opening to sort of see how an office really worked. I then went back to grad school, and then I went back to Boston, and I again worked for a while, and I really wanted to teach. And so I had an idea to go back for a PhD. And so those sort of moments in between my degrees really helped a lot. I made some money, which I needed. I wasn't supported by my family, so I needed money. So that helped. But it also it varied my experience. And so it really depends on your own situation, your own personal situation. If you, want to work, if you need to work, it's really a personal decision at that point. So in terms of courses that you need to take, if you have a background in architecture, like I said, you could go into the 2-year program. If you don't, you don't need to worry. We have all the courses you need in your first year. And so when we were rethinking the new curriculum, we were thinking about what is the experience of someone coming into a program from literature or from theater, right? From something that's not quite connected. What you don't have is you don't have construction knowledge, you don't have representation knowledge, you don't know how to actually draw a building in software that's probably foreign to you. So in your first semester, you're going to get a technology class that's going to include structures, construction, as well as mechanical systems, but at an introductory level. So that first class, you're going to get a whole range of that information. You're also going to have a visualization class, which will help you learn how to draw and learn software. So right from the start, you'll be given all that in your first semester.
All right, we're out of time. So thanks for everyone who joined us. If you have any last minute questions, you can email designgrad@asu.edu. Christy Brown and I are the ones who oversee that, so we can get you in touch with anyone if you need to be. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.